The silent guest, the house at the end of Blackwood Lane, had always been a subject of local whispers. A sprawling Victorian relic with ivy-choked walls and a gate that groaned like a dying thing when pushed open. It had been empty for years. That was until Thomas Vance moved in. Thomas was a quiet man, a writer looking for solitude. He didn't mind the house's reputation. In fact, the isolation suited him. He spent his days at his desk working on his novel, and his nights in an old leather chair by the fireplace, sipping whiskey and listening to the wind howl through the trees. But something was off about the house. From the moment he moved in, Thomas felt it. The sensation of being watched, of something just beyond his vision. Shadows in the corners seemed to stretch when he wasn't looking. The air carried a peculiar scent, damp and metallic like old blood. The first real sign that something was wrong came a week after his arrival. One evening, Thomas found the study door ajar. He was certain he had closed it before going to bed. The next morning, his manuscript pages were scattered across the floor. Assuming a draft had caused the mess, he dismissed it. But as the nights wore on, other things began happening. Whispers in the walls, faint scratching from inside the floors. One evening, as he wrote by candlelight, something caught his eye. A figure standing just outside, the study barely visible in the dim glow of the hall. "Hello?" Thomas called. No answer. He rose cautiously, stepping toward the doorway. His breath caught in his throat. When he reached the hall, the figure was gone. That night, he barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt a presence near, the sensation of cold fingers grazing his skin. Days passed. Thomas convinced himself it was just his imagination, the product of isolation and long hours spent writing. But the disturbances grew worse. Objects moved from where he had left them. The whispers became clearer, forming words he couldn't quite understand. And then there was the mirror. One evening he glanced at the large antique mirror in his bedroom and saw something impossible. His reflection was not his own. The face staring back at him was gaunt, its eyes sunken and black, its mouth twisted into a silent scream. He stumbled backward, heart hammering, and when he dared to look again, it was just his normal reflection. But the fear had taken root. That night, Thomas heard footsteps in the hall. Slow, deliberate. He held his breath, gripping the handle of his bedside drawer, where he kept a knife. The footsteps stopped outside his door. Then the handle turned. The door creaked open an inch. With a burst of adrenaline, Thomas leapt from the bed, yanking the door open. The hallway was empty. But there, on the wooden floor, were wet footprints leading from the stairs to his door. Something was in the house. He decided to leave. Whatever was haunting this place was beyond his understanding. But as he packed his bags the next morning, he made one fatal mistake. He checked the basement. The door had been locked since he moved in, but now it stood ajar as though inviting him. The air that wafted from the darkness below was foul, thick with rot. Holding his breath, Thomas descended the stairs, the old wood groaning beneath his weight. At the bottom, he found an old iron door, its surface rusted and slick with moisture. And then he saw it, the corpse. It was crumpled in the corner, its flesh shriveled and blackened, as if something had drained it dry. Its mouth was frozen in an expression of sheer terror. The fingers were twisted, clawing at the ground, as if it had died trying to escape. Thomas staggered backward, bile rising in his throat. That's when he felt it, the cold breath on his neck, a whisper in his ear. "You shouldn't have come here." Pain exploded in his chest. He looked down to see his own hands. No, not his own. Something using his hands, plunging the knife into his abdomen. His vision blurred as he collapsed, the world fading to black. When the real estate agent arrived a week later to check on Thomas, she found the house silent, undisturbed, except for one thing. The old iron door to the basement was shut once more, and the stench of rot was stronger than ever. Thomas Vance was never seen again, and the house at the end of Blackwood Lane remained, waiting, always waiting for its next guest.